Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Kings and Priests podcast. I'm Michael, and I'm here with Dean. Dean, how are you?
I'm good. I'm coming to you from an undisclosed location
Undisclosed
where my
location.
regular camera doesn't work and I have to use my iPhone, which probably works and sounds better.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny how it does that now, right? Like these new iPhones, the cameras and the mics on them are
Incredible.
insane. It's incredible.
So anyway,
What's
having
going
a good
on?
day so far.
You been busy?
Everything. Yeah. Just, I'm actually in Los Angeles, so
there you go.
Doesn't have to be undisclosed.
Land of the free and the home of the brave.
Yeah,
Los Angeles,
you got to be
California.
brave. I got the train down to San Diego from Union Station on Tuesday. That was an interesting. I had a moment in a Starbucks there getting I wasn't getting a coffee actually. I'd already had 2 cups of coffee, but I was getting a sausage muffin for breakfast in the Union Station, and this homeless lady is just very sad. She went and stole 2 things of orange juice. Like right in front of everyone. She just literally walked in, picked them up, and she was going to walk out. And I'm like, "Excuse me, madam, could I pay for those?" And she just didn't say a word. So she slowly gives them to me.
Aww.
And then there's like 3 people in front of me, and I said, "Would you like a sausage muffin, big muffin?" And she kind of nodded. So I said, two sausage muffins, please, and 2 orange juices. And anyway, then she left, and I got it. I paid for them. I get them. I'm waiting to get them. They come hot. And so I walk outside, and she's there with it wasn't a trolley. It was like this kind of bundle of stuff. And I gave her the 2 orange juices, and I gave her the muffin. And
oh man,
she didn't say a word, but she looked at me in the eyes and kind of said thank you as a little crease of a smile. And that was it. Then I got on the train. So
it just
it's
thing, LA, especially downtown. I just read they're closing. Actually, they're closing some Starbucks downtown.
Yeah, I think they closed 40 stores
because the staff has said we can't.
They're not safe.
We're not safe. That's wild.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's crazy. Apparently there is possibility for them to reinstate a mask mandate at the end of the month. I just read, I don't know.
No one's going to do that, but it was 70% masks down LA. I was shocked having come from Utah where it's like 0.00001% masks. Yeah, man, it's just funny.
we love our masks in LA. We love.
Well, they love being told what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyhow,
so the markets since we last talked are doing better. They're bouncing along.
Might be more to go.
Yeah, seems like it, right? I did read, though, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that Tesla disclosed they sold almost all of their Bitcoin.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is pretty interesting for a profit. Yeah. So, things are moving along. Things are moving along in this. I guess we're still not saying.
Unemployment is still low, even though there's layoffs coming in tech and other places. On the whole, employment is very strong, which means if we're in a recession, which we'll find out pretty soon if we are 2 quarters of negative growth, it could be mild because people are working, which means there's money flushing through the economy. People are buying stuff, and we could just bounce through this for a year, another year or more, where it's just not super growth around. Inflation is hopefully peaking, and we get through this one, unlike other ones where it can be very debilitating.
Right.
For business.
And just lasts for a long time. Yeah. So today I want to talk about raising money because, we talk a lot about bootstrapping, and obviously any business at some point has to look at, do I raise money? How do I raise money? And do I not raise money? What do I do? There's an article this morning actually in the Wall Street Journal, yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. Title was Tech Downturn Slows Early Stage Startup Funding. And essentially the the gist of the article is this: the fundraising slowdown is real, but venture funds are sitting on record amounts of capital committed by LPs last year. So it
Correct.
still is a great opportunity for outstanding companies to raise in this environment. So I think the idea here is that it's slowed, but it's not impossible, especially if you're a strong business. And like you've said before, there is still a lot of cash and a lot of capital out there that has somewhere it's got to go, right?
Yeah, there's always going to be money for good ideas. The couple of things have changed. Valuations have changed. So if you thought you were going to raise $1 million at a $10 million value last year, that's not going to be the case, especially if you're pre-revenue and kind of post MVP, right? Pre-product is not going to get a lot of money right now.
Right.
So, and you have to think,
unless you're a superstar founder that's maybe.
Maybe. I don't think people are going to say, here's 20 million for an idea. Right. Now you may, unless you're like a super rock star and have done this 4 times, maybe, but those guys don't usually need it because they made money from the last ones they did. So they do it themselves. But the thing is, you got to ask yourself the question, why am I going to take money? Why am I going to sell part of my company to take this money? What am I going to do with it? And the main reason that you always say yes at some point is that you not just want to grow, like growth is baked into your whole, you wake up in the morning, you fall out of bed and you're thinking about growth. It's acceleration of the growth. That's the only reason you want to take money.
Right.
If I sold 10% of my company, for $1 million, could I, on this trajectory, I'm going to get to, $100 million business here. But if I take the $1 million, can I bring forward that, trajectory, 5 years? So that's the only reason you're going to take the money.
Right.
And so, and that's why most founders decide at some point they can bootstrap for a long time. They can generate revenue. They can plow that revenue back in to keep the company growing, which is, usually more employees and more advertising spend and whatever. Or am I going to go take some money, sell off part of my business so I can go faster? That's the only reason you take money.
So let's talk about, I found an article by Paul Graham, right, who's one of the co-founders of Y Combinator, about what the process is like for finding investors and raising money. So funny enough, this is a pretty old article, but it's still like one of the, the highest trafficked article on his blog. His site is just phenomenal. His personal blog site. There's just so much great wisdom on there. So I want to run through a few of these and just some points that he brings and just kind of see what you think about them and talk through those. So the first one is have low expectations. So when you're raising money, have low expectations. He says the reason raising money destroys so many startups' morale is not simply that it's hard. It's so much harder than expected. And what kills you is the disappointment. So startup founders tend to be optimistic. This can work well in tech and company building, but that's the wrong way to approach raising money. Better assume investors will always let you down, which I think is an interesting way to think about it, but maybe you have to be that way in raising money. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going to go contrary to this one.
Okay.
Because we're people of faith.
Yep.
We're believers by nature. And so I find it difficult to go into anything with low expectations, number one. Like entering into a relationship with low expectations isn't a great outcome. Right. Starting a business with low expectations and and what it's going to take to grow that thing, not a great way to start. So I'm gonna go counterclockwise on this and say, okay. Now I would say that raising money is hard. To some people it comes easy. To some people it doesn't. And I actually think raising money depends a lot on your demeanor, because when you're in the early days of a business, you don't have a lot of track record. I don't have a lot of years of. So how I present my product or service or idea is going to really matter. And if I don't come across like, if someone come to me and said, "Hey, I need to raise this money," And, I guess you got to split the two. You got to contain yourself around getting rejected, but you just wake up every day knowing you're going to get a bunch of no's.
Right.
And this is why salespeople make great entrepreneurs and great, startup people, is they just don't care about the no's. They just keep banging until they get a yes. So
yeah,
look, if you're a melancholy, engineer, maybe that's why you need a co-founder who's a sales guy and manager that can, go and rustle the bushes and raise some money. So look, I get what he's saying. Like, who likes being rejected over and over? No one. But it's kind of the part of the deal. And
yeah, it's almost, and I totally agree with you on this one. You don't want to have low expectations. I think we can be grounded in reality,
100%.
right? Like, we can be grounded in reality, and like, this is this person's money that they worked hard for, and so they're not just going to go, hey, yeah, really easily wire you the money, right?
Right.
But yeah, to not have high expectation, to me, that's the only reason you do this, is to have high expectations,
100%.
and I get that it's hard, right?
Yeah.
But I'm the same way anytime in any sales thing. Like, it's easy to just go through the process and then not remember, like, oh, this is a real person with real money, and they have to actually think about where they're going to put it, right? Yeah. So, so I would say I like that. Have high expectation and go into it with, the belief that good things are going to happen, regardless if this person invests in you or not, right?
Yeah. And if they don't, someone else will.
Yep. Number 2, keep working on your startup. And he said, it sounds obvious to say that you should keep working on your startup while raising money. Actually, this is hard to do, and most startups don't manage this well.
Yeah.
Raising money has a mysterious capacity to suck up all of your time.
That's true.
So he says, put the startup first. If you keep the company moving forward, release new features, increase traffic, doing deals, getting written about, those investor meetings are likely going to be more productive. Not because your startup's going to seem more alive, but also because it'll be better for your own morale, which is one of the main ways investors judge you. I love this point. This is a really good point.
And it's back to the same old, right? Around bootstrapping, hard work, always trying to, you're just hustling every angle to get, get ahead. Like there's a moment where, because, we believe in this thing, if you've got this idea, you kind of keep your job for as long as you can. You maybe have saved up some of your own money to go and spend a year building, this prototype or this. And, at some point you're hopefully going to get some revenue, but you've still got plenty to live on. And so you've created your own runway, right? And so then you're not as beholden to have to go get early money. You just, you just keep it going. And so you're working 2 jobs. That's what this means, entrepreneur. You're working 80 hours a week. You're certainly not working 40. So, and it's usually that's when, investor comes along and they see what you're doing. Like, I'm doing this, like I'm doing 30 hours a week on Uber, and I've got this other thing going, but in the meantime, I'm working on this. This is my passion, my dream. I'm living for this. And, man, I'll invest in that guy like all day long. So there's no shortcuts here.
Yeah. One thing he talked about in this one that I thought was good, that I didn't add on this because we've talked about it before, but he basically says, can you, basically it's better to start do some consulting based upon the business that you're building rather than take money that puts you in a bad position because you just need it to pay the bills, right? So that's something he talks a lot about is, again, what angle can you work so that you don't have to take a bad, a bad investment. Third one, be conservative. As conditions get worse, the optimal strategy becomes more conservative. When things go well, you can take risks. When things are bad, you want to play it safe. He said, I advise approaching fundraising as if it were always going badly. The reason is that between your ability to delude yourself and the wildly unstable nature of the system you're dealing with, things probably either already are or could easily become much worse than they seem. What I tell most startups we fund is that if someone reputable offers you funding on reasonable terms, take it.
Right.
What do you think? What do you think there? I think what he's talking about there is dealing with an investor, right? So
yeah.
And he dives more into it in a sense of like, you have a great meeting with an investor, you have a good conversation, the person kind of sort of seems interested. It's easy for the optimistic person to go, okay, they're in.
They're in, yeah.
And what he's sort of saying is like, you know, one good conversation doesn't equate to
Right.
this person is ready to sign a contract and wire you the money.
Right. Yeah. Nothing's done to you. You know, you've got a deal signed and money wired. So, but like I think that the spirit is too is if you've got a bona fide investor, don't get too greedy up front.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
now, last year when the market was ridiculous,
Yep.
My $10 million startup, right, and selling 10% for $1 million might have been easy.
Yep.
Like this year, you're lucky to get a $5 million valuation and 500K, right? So you got to understand what's going on in the marketplace. And if you really think your idea is worth, twice as what everyone else thinks it is, you're probably not going to get a lot of money. This at the after everything is said and done is still a marketplace. There are people requiring things from other people, so a price has to get set, and the market will set the price. Sometimes you have SoftBank outlying like people that come along and just go boom, but that was in a very frothy market, so they dragged everyone up into unrealistic territory around valuation. Now it's all back 50%, which is some arguing like, hey, this is where it should be. Like that was stupid for 2 years. So the market's always setting the price. And if you think your company's worth X and the market is telling you why, and you want to do a deal, you do a deal, knowing that you're going to get your capital and hopefully you grow and blah, 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 all the rest. So the market sets the price. And if 5 people are telling you the same thing, you better listen to them or don't do the deal.
Right. Yeah. So it's being conservative in the way that you are valuing yourself and the way that you're valuing the business that you are building. And right now we are in a time where, conservative, likely the founder is going to have a higher valuation on probably what the real valuation is or what the investor is. So, okay, here we go. Let's do number 4, be flexible. And this kind of builds on the last one we talked about. There are 2 questions VCs ask that you shouldn't answer. Who else are you talking to and how much are you trying to raise? The custom of a startup needing a fixed amount of funding is an obsolete one left over from the days when startups were more expensive. Company that needed to build a factory or hire 50 people obviously needed to raise a certain minimum amount, but few technology startups are in that position today. I love this one. Talk to me about this.
So
because I actually have a couple of questions on this one from someone who's raising money to someone who has invested. So I want to hear your perspective, and then I have a couple of questions for you on this one.
Well, this one to me is like, you're an entrepreneur who basically is looking to raise money to grow and increase the business, go faster. And like what I'm looking for as an investor is come and show me and prove to me and convince me that you have 6 different ways to do this. And I think that this is like, and so like, the example he gives here, hey, I just want to raise 50 grand so I can feed the team. Right? As opposed to give me $1 million so we can go buy office space and put ourselves on, 100 grand a year. Right. So like, I love the fact that you could come and think through this thing. It's like, hey, I don't want to sell a lot of equity of the business now because we know it's going to be really valuable one day, but do you want to get in early with, a small, and I did this, we had offers to sell a lot more equity in the early days, but we just took as much as we needed to keep growing as fast as we could and not waste money. That's kind of a side point too. You got to know how to be frugal as an entrepreneur. You cannot, and we all know these stories, like WeWork's one of them. There was just, excessive upon excess. Like it's just was stupid. So yeah, I like the scrappy entrepreneur is like, hey, I can do this 5 different ways. And will you help me work out which one? And if you've got an investor who's like legit and not going to rip you off and, take you for a ride, let's assume you hooked up with someone good. You work out together what the best course is as far as what money you should take, how much, and when you should take it. I think that's a great way to approach it. Right.
And I've thought about this a lot too, because with what, with what we're building at Vast, it is very much like it. We don't need it. We're not trying to raise $1 million.
Right.
We're not even trying to raise $500,000. There may be a time for that where it's like, okay, we've got some gas. It's time to grow.
Opportunities.
Whatever. But right now it is very much 3, 6, 9 months at a time.
Right.
Here's something that I struggle with a lot, though, is as someone who's trying to raise money, I'm trying to pitch an investor on a big vision.
Yep.
So
as you should.
So I can which you should, but so you're an investor and I go, hey Dean, look, man, I'm running out of money. I just need another 6 months. I need another $50,000 to keep me paying myself a modest salary and keep the things going. Right. But you as an investor want maximum value. Like you want to be looking at something going like, to me, that just sounds less compelling. Right.
No, because
I'm going to keep you guys going for a while to just kind of hope. Do you understand what I'm asking here?
Right? So, like, you know, in your instance, like there was like a 12-month plan that we were going to do X. So if I've invested in that environment and someone comes to me and say, hey, look, we want to re-up. And I'm like, well, how did you do against your plan? Right. And if you hit your plan and then you say, well, tell me your next 12-month plan. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, he did the first 12-month plan. So why wouldn't, and he's got momentum now. Right. Why wouldn't they hit the second 12-month plan? So,
so it's sort of like he hit a single. Yep. Let's let him hit another single and just keep hitting singles.
Maybe hit 3 singles.
Like loaded the bases. Right. As opposed to
swinging for the fences.
This is what I've done. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. And is that mostly like, existing investors, like a brand new investor isn't going to necessarily go, oh yeah, okay, here's like an extra, here's some money to top you up and keep you going. Like I'm trying to get practical for people.
I actually think it doesn't matter because you've got the track record. The key is the results. Okay. The key is the runs on the board. So any investor, it's like, hey, I did this with this amount of money and I got to here. Mm-hmm. And here's my plan for the next 12 months to get there. So it doesn't matter. Yep. But you've got an investment pool, number one, and then and this is the overarching kind of comment on all these points. Entrepreneurs should always be thinking about raising money. There's as exhausting as it is, and there's times where you really have to ratchet it up, and really it takes you a lot of your time. You're always building your network and look on the lookout to raise money. Always. So
yeah, that's great. So let's talk about rejection, the next one, which I think this is a really good one. Don't take rejection personally. Now, you mentioned salespeople making good entrepreneurs. Yeah. Most salespeople have gotten past this early in their career, right? Because you don't have much of a choice. But it is a real thing, right? So getting rejected by investors can make you doubt yourself. After all, they're more experienced than you, which, I totally get that. The way to handle rejection is with precision. You shouldn't ignore it. It actually might mean something, but you shouldn't automatically get demoralized either. So that's this like really good dance that I think kind of separates the men from the boys, right? In that, like, I'm not going to get offended if I'm rejected. Absolutely. I'm going to take the rejection and go, where were they right? And what can I learn from it? But I'm also going to take the rejection and go, okay, they obviously don't see this the way that I see it. That's like a really delicate dance, but I think it's really important for anyone trying to build a company.
Yeah. What are they rejecting? They're not rejecting me as a person. So it's not actually the right question, because I'm not presenting my personality for you to invest in. Right. I'm not investing my, Australian Viking good looks for you to invest in. I'm asking you to invest in a business that, until I create a culture, doesn't really have a personality. It's just ones and zeros and dollars and cents. So I'm not going to take anything personally, because it's got nothing to do with me as a person. Right. But it's got everything to do with me as someone with skills, ideas, organizational abilities, blah, blah, blah. So it's not a personal rejection ever. It could be a rejection of the business idea. That's what it's a rejection. A no from an investor means, and if they're a bona fide real investor with money to allocate to risky things like startups, so if they're not that you wouldn't even talk to them, right? But if they've done this before and they understand the risk, the rejection comes as a result of the business idea. it just didn't
Mm-hmm.
get past a certain threshold of risk for them,
Yep.
where they thought,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just can't see this working, so I'm not going. You know, I used to belong to a this kind of angel group, and like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all these entrepreneurs would come to UCLA, and they'd pitch right to investors, and there was like 40 of us in a room, and it was great watching
Mm-hmm.
these young guys pitch their things, you know.
Yep.
And I probably looked at 200 deals and invested in one of them,
Right.
right? And that was about the rate.
Mm-hmm.
That was about the
Yep.
going rate, right? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, it's not personal. It's just the numbers don't add up to me. I don't believe in the market. I don't think what you think about this thing. I'm not passionate like you are. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's personal.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a big thing. Another thing he mentions in this too is a rejection is the opportunity to look at your pitch.
Yep,
right.
for sure.
So, hey, maybe I didn't
There
communicate
you go.
this in a way that was compelling. Like maybe I just,
Yeah.
I didn't, you know. One thing I do is like, especially now, this is like a super practical tip. And I'm like in conversations I'm having with people, like almost all of them are on Zoom.
Yep.
I write a few notes and put it in the top corner of my computer. And I'm like, okay, these are the things that I need to make sure and
You touch
hit
on.
because I want them to leave with at least, I want them to hear me say X, Y, Z.
Excellent.
So at least then I know I said what my basic thesis for this
Right.
business
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's a big thing. Maybe you just didn't pitch it. Maybe you just didn't pitch
That's
it right. Okay. Let's do number 6. Let's just do this one briefly because there's actually a couple more I want to get through. So avoid inexperienced investors. Though novice investors seem unthreatening, they can be the most dangerous sort because they're so nervous, especially in proportion to the amount they invest. Raising 20 grand from a first-time angel investor can be as much work as raising 2 million from a VC fund.
Yeah.
I've got a unique thought on this, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, look, you got to start somewhere. So, but yeah, if this is investing in startups it's better than buying lottery tickets, but it's about the same as
Right.
betting on horse racing. You got
Yep.
20 starting and one wins.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, it's not for the faint of heart. And if you're going to invest like your money into businesses that are pre-revenue or post-product pre-revenue or tiny revenue, this is money you can afford to lose.
Right.
And so so if they're first time or do this for a living, they know the risk. And so, yeah, you don't want to like taking money off your Uncle Joe, you know, 50 grand, and Uncle Joe's like life savings are like 51,000.
Yeah, exactly. There may be that 50 grand means a lot more to him than it does Mr. Angel Investor guy.
So
yeah.
don't. Now, look, a lot of businesses have been started with family and friends money, right? Like mom and dad pitched in, and those stories are awesome. But there's a million other stories where that money went down the drain and everyone lost. So this is the riskiest thing you can do in business. Invest in startups.
Yeah.
And we hear all the kind of awesome stories about the unicorns, but there's a lot of pets.coms out there that took in a lot of millions of dollars and went down the toilet.
Yeah, that was going to be kind of my point. Is like I think, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. I really do think it's the founder's responsibility to, especially as a Christian, to be like sober minded in who they're taking investment from. Right, like you know, if someone says to me, "Hey, Mike, cool idea, we're gonna toss this money at you," it's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, am I going to be able to steward? Am I going to be able to steward this properly? And I think it's easy. You know, a VC is going to ask the right questions. They're going to make sure you're buttoned up. And like you said, they're going to be willing to lose the money. But having somebody that wants to get in early on your app idea that and wants to give you 10 grand that he was going to use to buy a house is probably not. Yeah. That's probably not the kind of money that you want to take. Even though I'm sure for some people that's a real
it's a thing.
It's a temptation.
Hopefully it's a problem you're going to have. Money coming from lots of sources, and you just try and pick the right ones. And sometimes friends and family money is the right source. You know, like it is. So, and because you feel really obligated and bound to work so much more harder to bring a return. Right. So it can be a good thing.
Yeah. Number 7, know where you stand. The most dangerous thing about investors is their indecisiveness. The worst case scenario is the long no, the no that comes after months of
Yeah.
meetings. And then he says, so while you're talking to investors, constantly look for signs of where you stand. And then he says, and this is why he says, investors tend to resist committing except to the extent that you push them.
Mm-hmm.
It's in their interest to collect the maximum amount of information while making the minimum number of decisions. So I guess this gets more into some of the tactical
Honestly,
nature of it.
A proper investment round has a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, we're raising X, at this valuation, you've got by the 15th. Hey,
Yep.
like, yeah, and that's what we're doing. It's not like it's not an invitation to look at my numbers for 6 months. It's like, hey, we're raising this, and here's the deadline.
We're on a timeline. Yeah. This is what's happening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and is that maybe have you found yourself in a situation like that before, where it's like you've been talking to somebody about investing in something? Is there sort of like good pressure that they can put on you versus bad pressure? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to put
pressure may not be the right word, but
I want to put pressure on them. And we've been fortunate to have more. Whenever we've gone to market to raise funds, we've always had more than we wanted. Like literally, we want to raise X, and we've got like 3 times that offered. So it's like, well, we just use them to get the best terms, and we give them a date and the bank account number. It's like, we can sign here and get it in.
This is it.
You win. So having that competitive advantage is awesome. It doesn't always work like that. But you just want to always be putting your company in a place where people come to you and and hear about what you're doing and the industry that you're in, and we'll fight to get on your cap table.
That's great. Cool. So I want to do one more question. We were gonna, if we had some time, we were gonna go into some more of these, but there are some basically uncommon questions investors may ask you. There was one specifically that I thought was a interesting one, and has actually happened to me, not just when it comes to investments, but also like raising money, but also jobs and anything like that. And the question is this: who believes in you, and how can I get in touch with them?
Yeah, I love that question.
That's a great question. And there have been, I remember specifically, I got a job. I was probably 20, I was like 20, 29 years old. I got a job that I was not qualified for, but simply because of who my boss was at the time, and they knew that this person believed in me, they basically gave me the job after one interview. And so I think this idea of like, who's in your life, who believes in you, who's behind you, who's mentored you, who's advised you, is a massive 100%. Piece of leverage. What do you think about that?
In the old days, you ask for references, right, on a resume, like who you're, like past bosses or whatever. In the age of digital communication, social media, and ease of which you can connect with anyone. I had someone hit me up on Twitter the other day, asked for my email to send me an idea. They just did it. Never met them. So we've talked about this before, like utilizing networks to leverage your ability to network with people that can help you go to where you want to go. Right. That's I put that in this in this bucket. So if you haven't done that, right, and you've kind of living on your island and you haven't kind of attached yourself either via consuming someone's, podcast and then sending them a note, thanking them. And like, this goes in the bucket of networking. So when the time comes to potentially you're looking at raising $1 million at a $10 million valuation, and someone asks you that question, what relationships have you built? And it's like, so I think that's the cool thing about this question is it talks to a kind of a lifestyle that you have to lead as a business owner and an entrepreneur. I'm always connecting. I'm always like, if I'm not doing business with, I'm doing business around, so it's like, in the last 7 years, I've literally spoken to people that have run multi-billion-dollar private equity firms. Doesn't mean they've invested in me, and then read copious amounts of content. Doesn't mean I know them, but I've reached out on Twitter, and they're like, I can't say, hey, so and so from this VC firm in the Valley can reference me. I can't say that, but along the journey, I'm building up my network to the point where one or two could, like, I could have, I actually could have you talk to a couple of billionaires, right? Because I've just gotten to know people, and I may not have done business with them. That somehow I've got them in them. I'm not in their orbit, like they're huge, but I've gotten a little bit of them into my orbit, and so I'm going to grab onto that and kind of do that, right? So I think the spirit of this is just be networking and don't be a jerk networker, right? Don't tell lies,
right? That's
just the worst. Don't go Amway on people. You get spotted pretty quick, but definitely build your network. And there's all the ways that we've talked about how you can do that. And so when the moment comes, potentially you're going to be able to leverage those relationships, even sometimes as small as they can be.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Raising money.
Fun times.
That's good. Hit us up if you have any questions. As usual, what were we going to say, Dean?
Just always be raising money.
Always be raising money. Always be doing it. I love it. Dean, thank you very much. We'll see you guys right back here next week for the Kings and Priests podcast. Talk to you soon.